Well, welcome to my podcast. And today we have a special guest and friend of mine, Conor Kearney. So, hi, Conor.
Hi, Jack. Thank you very much for having me today. And can I just say before we start, I really appreciate everything you've done for me, and it's a pleasure to be on this podcast and to try and get across to people the work you do, and to try and give people some incentive to work with you as well.
Well, Conor, you're so wonderful.
Thank you, Jack.
So tell the audience about you. Who are you?
As you might be able to tell from my accent, I am Irish. I grew up here in Dublin, Ireland, and I am an accountant. And I have an accounting company, which I started about 7 years ago. So we provide bookkeeping and management accounting services for small businesses here in Ireland and around the world. So that's what I do. I'm married to the lovely Molly, and we have one son, Abraham. And yeah, I lived in Portugal for a while. Myself and Molly moved to Portugal for a little bit after COVID, because, well, COVID was one of those times of reflection, right, Jack? So we took some time away from Ireland to enjoy the nice weather and the ease of life over in Portugal. But once we had our son, we decided it was certainly easier to be around family. So we came home, and we've been here since, and we love it.
Conor, how old is Abraham?
Abraham has just turned 2, so
The
very
terrible
much.
twos.
Yeah, and he's definitely started that phase about 2 months ago. So he refuses everything. Always rejects the first offer, and that kind of thing. So but he's great. I think, I suppose being a parent is very challenging, but it's a blessing in so many ways that it's just indescribable to someone who doesn't have children. So it's amazing, and I'm thankful, even though there are certainly many moments where I'm tired and I'm not too happy with Abraham, but generally speaking, it's worth it.
Conor, you're an honest man. So I
Uh,
don't know that everybody watches this podcast knows this, but for the most part, I do coaching with high potential people, executives, entrepreneurs, and I also have a product, and the product is called a roadmap. And the roadmap is built on the idea that everybody has a unique gift. We might call it a superpower. And many of us don't really know what our superpower is. We've wandered away from it or never understood it or been enticed by other things away from it. And if we could find it and align with it, my belief is that we would live the most successful and powerful life we could have. And so you engaged me around the roadmap, which is fascinating to me. And so I would like to kind of tease out for the audience what that experience was like for you from the very beginning to the very end. Is that okay with you?
that's great. I'm looking forward to it. Let's do it.
Okay, so you contacted me. How in the world did you come to know about me?
Well, you've worked with a number of people that I would follow online, and there is an investor called Manish Pabrai who you had worked with about 20 years ago, I think. You can correct me on the timeline. And I had seen a video of this guy Manish talking about the work he had done with you, and I saw this video about 8 years ago, and I remember seeing it and going, I need that. And I know I'm not going to be able to afford it now, but when I can afford it, I'm going to contact this guy Jack, and I'm going to do that roadmap process. It's hard to 8 years is probably a long time to be thinking about that in some ways, but I suppose why did I know it was for me? Uh, that's a it's a trickier question, but I suppose during the work that we did, it became quite clear that I didn't know, or didn't have a good idea who I was, and for whatever reason that might be. And I think, something in me knew that, certainly. And so that's why when I heard about, what you did, um I kind of just knew from the start that that was something I was going to do at some stage. So that's how I heard about it, and I heard another couple of references online over the years. But yeah, I obviously I thought about it for nearly a decade, so I was sure that I was going to do it, certainly.
Now it's so interesting to me because you're a fairly successful, accomplished person. I mean, you own your own company, you have a family, make a decent living, and yet there was something that you knew was missing, something that you knew you didn't have, that you could feel from Manish's interview, that uh, he found it, and you knew you have not found it yet, and that stayed with you for 8 years, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it did. And this is a first world problem, right? But
Right.
it's no less a problem. Okay, so there's plenty of um, people out there that are in way worse predicaments and everything. And I've always been generally happy, right? And I was born quite lucky, but somewhere along the way, I for one reason or another didn't invest I thought I might, where I might actually enjoy doing the work every day. Right, I didn't invest time, or I didn't allow myself the what it comes down to, really, Jack. And this might seem a bit woo woo, but in order to do what you really feel is for you, it comes down to a kind of a matter of self love, right, and self compassion, and being kind to yourself. And for one reason or another, I hadn't done that, and I felt life needed to be difficult in order for there to be some payoff in the future. And well, that's how I might characterize some of my thought process before working with you.
Okay, so now you're an accountant.
Correct. Yes.
And do you tap dance to work on your way to accounting?
Um, no, I suppose I don't. I became an accountant, and it's so funny because you always hear of people in who have been very successful in creative industries, and they had always said, you'll hear some movie star, or a pop singer or something like that, and say, oh, my parents always wanted me to become a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant. And I think, I certainly think my parents would have they wouldn't have forced me into being an accountant, but I wouldn't say they were displeased that's what I decided to do. But it was certainly my own. It was certainly I certainly decided to do it for me, and for some reason I thought that was the right path for me. But as you know,
Now, I take it you're not a bad accountant, are you?
um, well, it's interesting. What is bad, right? No, I'm not. I like, accounting is one of those things where it's either right or it's not. So, it's either correct, or so you kind of know whether you're good or whether you're bad. But it probably took me longer to get good than it might someone who had an affinity for it. But yeah, I suppose I'm not a bad accountant.
So you're a pretty good accountant who formed your own company, but still felt like something was missing.
Yeah, and I thought, so starting my own business selfishly, I felt that it was a way for me to kind of take control over my own life and my own destiny, and we've built something, myself and my colleagues have built something useful, right, which is great, and I do love helping the clients, and I love the client base, right. I love business owners and small businesses, and I do like that. But yes, there was something missing from that, and I was still aware of that, but I just couldn't pinpoint what that was, and I knew I would need help to pinpoint it.
So I'm going to jump ahead in my interview a little bit because I want to test our audience.
Okay.
So I tap dance to work every day because what I love to do is put together the puzzle of complicated people. I I have a gift of seeing and understanding what other people don't see and understand. So I would just challenge the audience to go, does this guy sound like what you'd expect an accountant to sound like? Because you didn't sound like an accountant to me when I met you. And then you told me a story, and the story caught my attention very quickly about what you liked to do as a boy. Do you remember what you told me?
Well, potentially, and I think this had come up in maybe some of the 360 interviews that you had done as well. But had it something to do with magic and being a magician?
Well, yes, something to do with magic. Tell people what you told me about magic.
Well, I think maybe the question that you had asked was, what drew you to that, and it was one of those things that I don't know, right? It was just one of those things that really struck me, and I became very obsessive about magic, right? And if you talk to magicians, it's not really. It's not really something that they control. Almost, it's just something that they they found this thing, and they just got so obsessed with it, and they had to do it, and they had to learn about it and everything else. So that was me when I was, age 14 to 21, kind of, on and off. I would suppose I had kind of bouts of obsession with it, and well, I suppose without trying to get too deep into it, I think it was just something that really caught my attention, and my activity at that time.
So, just to clarify, we're not talking about black magic. We're talking about being a magician and putting on magic shows to entertain people.
Yeah, exactly. We're not talking about voodoo, Jack, in this case, right?
Right.
And maybe some people might be worried listening to this, but no, it was magic for entertainment, magic for parties. Yeah,
So, you liked the sleight of hand and the creating surprise and delight from what people couldn't really quite figure out how you did it. You liked creating those experiences for people.
absolutely. And it was something, when you see a magician, there's just something that's so unexplainable, but so entertaining at the same time. It's one of those strange arts that's um, it's so unlike any other art form.
Yes. So when I heard that, I thought, well, this guy as a child, he wasn't like calculating numbers. He was entertaining people with magic. I can't imagine going, surprise, look at your tax return. Isn't this an amazing, wonderful surprise? Isn't it entertaining to see what I did here? Hi, everybody. Hey, I've discovered that there are only two ways people try to create success for themselves in their lives. The first way is probably the most popular way, which is I'm going to find somebody who I see as successful and I'm going to try to be like them. I'm going to study their life. I'm going to eat what they eat. I'm going to read their books and I'm going to practice being like them. The only problem with trying to be somebody you're not is that it's impossible to do. And sooner or later, you just fall short or give up. You just can't do it. The second way to create success is to double down on discovering who you are. Everybody is amazingly unique and has been given a gift to live life that can be very powerful if you discover it and develop it. And that's what I do. I work with people not who want to be like somebody else, who want to figure out who they are and align their life with who they are. If that's you, give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you and discover if you're the kind of person I can help. Thank you so much. I mean, it just doesn't happen in accounting that often.
And you can see, how different those worlds are, right? And how,
They are
how
different.
far away I got from what truly drove me. So, and just to, I don't want to spend too much time, right? But I, I had an accounting teacher when I was in school, and he basically said to me, you can't use a calculator, Connor. Like, this is not something that you should really be doing. And that was in and around kind of age 15, 16. So I got good at using the calculator, but I probably shouldn't have.
So, this roadmap process has three parts. First, I gave you two assessments. They're pencil and paper things that help me get a sense of how you're hardwired. And then I talked to six people, many of whom were attracted to you in life because they saw something special in you. I talked to your spouse. I talked to some friends. I like to talk to mentors and coaches and lifelong friends, business partners, people that, they saw something unique about you. So I get to learn about you through their eyes and get a historical perspective. And then you and I spent about 6 hours together, like 1 hour a week. And I use all that I gained from those assessments and talking to those people to apply my gift to come to understand you in a fundamental way. Now, if we go through those three pieces, I don't know if you remember what your experience was like. Any thought about the assessments? Were they strange or difficult, or have you
No,
forgotten all about them?
no, I the assessments were they certainly weren't difficult, and I think um, I mean, the instructions that you gave me and everything were very helpful, because there was, if you don't know instantly, you can just put I don't know. And I remember on one of them anyway, I was like pretty much I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And I that's probably the same for most people. There's probably only one or two things that really stand out. But I think that part of it, for me anyway, I really believe in kind of psychometric testing and personality testing and things like that. So it grounded it a bit for me, and enabled me to buy into the process a bit more as well from the beginning. So that's what I thought of the testing, and the testing proved very useful to you, I think, in the final result and roadmap.
It was. It was. How about the interviews? Do you have any? I mean, I didn't talk about the people you gave me to interview. Did you get any feedback from them or have any impression of that process and how helpful that was?
Well, did I get feedback from them? I suppose what they said about me, I suppose, came mostly through you, in the interviews, but also obviously in the final roadmap. But I think what I would say is, out of context, some of the things that people said might have been, if they had said that to me directly, or in another, it's just in another context, I think maybe I probably wouldn't have taken it too favorably, depending.
Mm,
So
mm.
not all the stuff was well, what you would determine as maybe nice, but it wasn't. I suppose it wasn't everything I just wanted to hear, right? And there was a maybe a little bit of difficulty in hearing what other people had to say, but again, very important, right? And I knew going into this that there were going to be difficult parts to it, which again I just think adds credibility to the process, right? And makes it a bit more meaningful, because you know the things that you don't know about yourself are nearly by definition the things that you don't want to know about yourself, right? So being told those things and accepting those things was a big part of the process too.
Yes, if I didn't tell you things you didn't know, then it would be useless.
Correct.
So I'm trying to discover what you don't know. And so it's going to be a little maybe surprising or even shocking.
And I think, sometimes you kind of do know. I kind of,
Yes,
there's things
yes.
on the surface there that I was ignoring, but yeah, it's definitely good to hear those things throughout the process. And obviously, Jack, you have such a kind way of explaining these things, and to well, helping me kind of accept them, and to see them not necessarily as weaknesses, but as strengths.
Great. And then you and I spent those 6 hours together. What was that experience like for you?
Um, at the start, challenging actually, and I don't know if you remember this, but there was maybe um in the first meeting that we had was quite. I don't know if I couldn't get my head straight, or I couldn't really answer the questions in the way you were asking them. And I think you changed. I don't know. My sense was is that you changed your approach, and obviously you've been doing this for a very long time, and it was. I just think your experience maybe came into play there in terms of this guy's this guy's not getting it, or he's not this approach I'm taking is not necessarily working really, and I'm not getting through to him. And so there was a slight change, and from there it became much easier. But again, there were moments, because within those, you're bringing up things that maybe people had said, and maybe results from the tests which weren't necessarily um, easy to hear again, but it was kind of in the week. It was great having a week kind of in between each call, because I could digest what was talked about. I could think about it a little bit more, and you always followed up with an email of notes, so I kind of had something to a kind of summary to grasp onto for the meeting, and then it was we'd come into the next meeting, and I would have some kind of clarifying thoughts on the previous session, which was always useful, and useful for you, I think. And so yeah, so it was, if you like, the roadmap document at the end was nearly irrelevant, given that by the time we got to and I don't know if this is the same with all your clients, but by the time we got to the last meeting, much of it was we had already talked about and gone deeper into.
Yes. So this culminates in a document that includes the assessment output, actually what everybody said about you verbatim, but without their names attached to their comments. So you don't actually know who said what. And then my analysis, which would include strengths and weaknesses and what your superpower is, as clearly as I can define it, as well as suggestions as to what would help you align better with it. So, did you did you have any surprises as far as the output of this process was concerned?
Um, no, well, as I sort of mentioned there already, we had already gotten the
Yep.
the the heavy lifting done, and we discussed many of the points already. So by the time the document comes out, I suppose there weren't any big surprises. But seeing, I hadn't seen what people had said verbatim, or what the answers to your kind of interview questions to them were, and that was a little bit, for me anyway, that was a little bit distracting actually when I finally got the document, because we had talked about stuff, but then you see something that you're like, oh, who said that? Or and it just kind of, it was good that I was getting a kind of an honest reflection of the data that went into the analysis, but at the same time it did distract me a little bit, seeing what people had said. But and you always skip over the good stuff. People were saying really nice things about me, and where I was great and where my strengths were, but you always just see the potentially negative things, right?
Connor, if you got anything of value out of the process, what would you say was valuable? What insights were helpful to you?
So, do you mean specific insights that I got from the?
Anything, however you want to state it. You went through the process looking for something. Did you get what you were looking for?
Absolutely, and more. I think that um, the biggest thing, and I suppose the most profound thing I got was direction. Um, what I didn't have before was who I am and where I'm going. And you don't know
Mm.
where you're going, right, unless you know who you are. So that was very important to me, and that's what I wanted out of it, and I definitely got that. What was also quite profound, and I think I said this to you at the time, was that um, I kind of felt after doing the work that I had all the answers. It's going to
Mm.
sound so strange, right? Because everyone is winging it, right? And that is absolutely true. But I think the level of clarity I got from before we did the work to afterwards felt like um uh certainly felt like I had all the answers, and that has been a lasting. It's been about a year since I went through this process with you, and that has been a lasting change. So it was I suppose I spent so much time reading books and kind of self-help and things like that, and I suppose someone who's been through that whole process and still does it, you kind of feel no one really knows. Yeah, there's good things here and there's good things there, but what I didn't have was just that sense of direction, and getting that was actually a very, very profound change in me and how I think about things and how I think about myself. So that was very useful. So thank you for that.
Fantastic. Did you have any disappointments or frustrations, things you were wish you had gotten that you didn't?
No, I think that those any frustrations really that I had were at the start of the process, or at the start of the interviews, right? So just there when I was talking about you changing direction, maybe in the first interview, I was maybe a little bit frustrated, and you started talking about me being a magician, and once we started going down that, I was like, oh no, like I don't want to be a magician. This is and but you did say to me, look, this doesn't mean that you have to be a magician, right? And you started giving me some examples, right? You were talking about nighttime TV and things like that, and these were things I'd never considered, but something I wasn't rejecting them straight off, right? Like I was when you had kind of started mentioning the magician stuff again. So I think most of the frustration would have come at the start, but there was nothing. There was nothing at the end. I suppose, it's still up to me, right? And that was
Good.
actually maybe a kind of a realization I got, that indirectly from doing the work, is that um, it's great to have a direction, but now it's up to me to do that, right, and to follow that yellow brick road, if you like, for want of a better expression. So um, that's always a challenge, right? And that's always something that I need to do, and that I can't outsource to anyone, sadly, right? But I suppose that's what makes life interesting.
Yeah, certainly having a map is different than taking a journey, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Connor, you've been fantastic. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. It's delightful. You're a wonderful man.
Jack, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it was a pleasure working with you. And I'm delighted to do this, and I hope it's useful to you and your audience.
Thanks. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, Jack.